For 3 years, they treated me like dirt. My fiancée made me wash her little brother's underwear. Her mother made me sleep in the garage with the dog. Then one day, a convoy of Rolls-Royces pulled up to our broken-down house. The richest man in the country knelt before me and cried, "Welcome home, young master." I threw the annulment papers in my fiancée's face. "We're done." And just like that, the most powerful families in the entire city started to panic. "Ethan, have you lost your mind?" On the other end of the line, Isabella Vance's voice was the same as always, ice cold, laced with an impatient, condescending bite. I almost laughed. Lost my mind? No. For the first time in a long, long time, I was perfectly sane. "Isabella," I said, my voice unervingly calm as I stared out the window at the gray, overcast sky. "Our engagement is over. What is this nonsense?" A flicker of emotion, annoyance, finally entered her tone. "Ethan, stop with these childish games. What's the point?" "There is no point," I said flatly. "That's why it's over." I hung up before she could reply. As the dial tone buzzed in my ear, I let out a long, slow breath, like I was expelling a lifetime of filth from my lungs. Because I had. A past lifetime. I was reborn. Reborn in this exact moment, on the phone with Isabella, about to end things for good. In my last life, I was the illegitimate son the powerful Thompson family had cast aside. Desperate for their approval, I agreed to move in with the Vances, to become Isabella's live-in fiancé. For 5 years, I was her loyal puppy. When her stomach acted up, I was the one waking up at 4 in the morning to make her the special bone broth she liked. When she wanted a rare orchid from a private collector in South America, I was the one who flew halfway across the world, my hands torn to shreds by thorns, just to bring it back for her. When her startup was about to go under, I was the one who went to the Thompson family estate and begged on my hands and knees for 3 days straight until they gave me the funding to save her. I thought my devotion would earn me an ounce of her affection. And what did I get? The moment she became the famous Ice Queen CEO of Riverbend City, the first thing she did was announce to the press that I was just a distant relative doing odd jobs for her. Then she slapped a cold, sterile annulment agreement on the table. "Ethan, we're from 2 different worlds," she'd said. "Just being seen with you lowers my status." I was thrown out of the Vance house without a penny to my name. The real joke? My so-called family, the Thompsons, broke both of my legs and threw me into the freezing river just to curry favor with her. As the icy water closed over my head, my last thought wasn't of hate. It was regret. Regret for being such a pathetic, tail-wagging dog. Luckily, fate gave me a second chance. This time, someone else could play the simp. I just wanted to coast, to live a quiet life for myself. The moment I hung up, another call came in. It was Isabella's mother, my ex-future mother-in-law, Sharon Vance. The second I answered, a shrill screech stabbed through the speaker. "Ethan Reed, you ungrateful little bastard. Who the hell do you think you are, breaking things off with Isabella? What are you without us? We took you in, gave you a roof over your head, food to eat, and this is how you repay us? You think you're hot stuff now? Let me tell you, without the Vance family, you're nothing but a stray dog on the street." I held the phone an arm's length away. When she finally paused to breathe, I spoke calmly. "Are you done?" My tone caught her off guard. "If you're done, I'm hanging up." "You dare," she shrieked. "Ethan, I'm ordering you, right now, to get your ass down to Isabella's office and beg for her forgiveness on your knees. If you don't, I'll make sure you can't find a job scrubbing toilets in this city." I chuckled. "Then I guess you better try." I hung up and blocked both of their numbers. Finally, peace and quiet. Just then, a soft knock came from the apartment door. "Ethan, are you home?" A sweet, slightly timid voice called out. It was the girl from next door, Chloe Miller. I opened the door. Chloe stood there holding a steaming bowl of beef stew. She glanced up at me, then shyly looked down, a blush creeping up her cheeks. "My mom made extra stew," she said, her voice soft as honey. "She wanted me to bring you a bowl." Chloe's family had been our neighbors for over a decade. Ever since we were kids, she'd follow me around, calling me Ethan. Her parents were just regular, working-class people, but their whole family was kind and decent through and through. In my last life, when the Vances and Thompsons had teamed up to ruin me, when I was homeless and starving, she was the one who secretly slipped me a sandwich. After I died, she was the one who ignored the Vances power and set up a small, unmarked memorial for me. This girl. This was the person I should have cherished all along. I took the bowl, the warmth seeping into my palms. Thanks, Chloe. I appreciate it. I looked at her, my gaze softer than it had been in years. My stare seemed to make her even more flustered. Her face turned a shade redder, like a ripe apple. It's nothing. She waved her hands and took a step back. You should eat it while it's hot. I'll see you later. Like a startled rabbit, she turned and scurried back into her apartment across the hall. I smiled, closed the door, and finished the entire bowl of stew in one go. It warmed me from the inside out, my stomach and my heart. This was what it felt like to be treated like a human being. The next day, I got a call I never expected. The caller ID said Mr. Quinn. It took me a second to remember. This was the contact my mother gave me. She died when I was very young, but before she passed, she gave me a phone number and told me to call it if I ever hit rock bottom. In my past life, I never even remembered it, not even as I was drowning. Hello, Mr. Quinn, I asked, my voice hesitant. A steady, middle-aged man's voice, thick with emotion, came from the other end. Young master, you finally called. Young master, I froze. Mr. Quinn, I think you have the wrong number. Impossible. The madam's instructions were clear. Only you would have this number. Mr. Quinn's voice was trembling with excitement. Young master, your mother. She didn't pass away from an illness all those years ago. It was a ruse to protect you. She faked her death and returned to the family estate in New York. My brain buzzed, then went completely blank. She's alive. I could feel my own voice shaking. Yes, young master. And she has been waiting for you. She asked me to tell you that from this day forward, you are no longer the outcast of the Thompson family. You are the sole heir to the Blackwood family of New York. To make up for the years of suffering you've endured, the madam has already transferred her entire personal fortune, $1 trillion, to a black card registered in your name. The card is hidden in a false bottom in your nightstand. The password is your birthday. Young master, the Blackwood family is waiting for you to come home. After I hung up, my head was spinning. The New York Blackwoods? $1 trillion? My hands trembling, I went to the nightstand and fumbled with the base until I found the hidden compartment I never knew existed. Inside, resting on a bed of velvet, was a sleek, black titanium card etched with a simple, elegant golden crest. I was a trillionaire. This whole time, I just wanted to live a quiet life. But this was one hell of a welcome back party. Suddenly, the apartment door was kicked open with a loud bang. Sharon Vance stormed in, flanked by two burly security guards, her face a mask of fury. Ethan Reed, you little punk, how dare you block my number? She screamed, pointing a finger right at my nose. Today, I'm going to teach you what happens when you cross the Vance family. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on the black card in my hand. They lit up with greed, and she snatched it away. Ooh, what's this piece of junk? Looks pretty flashy for a fake, she sneered, turning it over in her hands with disdain. What? You planning on using a toy card to scam people? A loser like you? Don't make me laugh. I looked at her smug face, and my own expression turned to ice. Give it back. Give it back. Sharon cackled like I just told the funniest joke in the world. I'm confiscating this. And you're coming with me right now to apologize to Isabella. On your knees. Otherwise, these men are going to break your legs. As she spoke, the two guards cracked their knuckles and started advancing on me. I looked at them, and I smiled. It was a smile that held a chilling, murderous edge. It seems, I said softly, that some people just never learn. The next second I moved. Thump, thump. Two dull, meaty impacts echoed in the small room. Before the guards could even register what was happening, they flew backward like broken kites, slamming hard against the wall. They slid to the floor in a heap, unconscious. The room fell deathly silent. The arrogant sneer on Sharon's face froze, melting into pure, unadulterated terror. Her eyes bulged, and she pointed a trembling finger at me, her lips moving but no words coming out. You. I walked toward her, one slow step at a time, each footfall like a drumbeat on her heart. I stared her down, my nails digging into my palms. The memory of my legs being snapped, of the freezing water, of the utter despair from my past life, now boiled over into a tidal wave of rage. You were saying something, I said, my voice low but sharp as a shard of ice. About breaking my legs? Sharon scrambled backward, tripping and falling on her, but the blood drained from her face. No, that's not what I meant. Ethan, don't do anything rash. We can talk about this. She waved her hands frantically. A foul stench filled the air. She had actually wet herself in fear. I stood over her, looking down with eyes devoid of any warmth. Give me the card. Here, take it. Shaking uncontrollably, she held out the black card like it was a hot coal. I took it, pulled a tissue from my pocket, wiped it clean with deliberate care, and then tossed the tissue into the trash can. Her hands had touched it. It was dirty now. Sharon's eyes widened at the gesture. Ignoring her, I walked over to the unconscious guards and took the car keys from one of their pockets. Get out, I said, without even looking back at her. As if granted a pardon from the governor, Sharon scrambled to her feet and practically crawled out of the apartment, not daring to spare me a second glance. I took the guard's beat-up sedan and drove straight to the most expensive luxury mall in Riverbend City. I denied myself too much in my last life. This time, I was going to make up for it. I had barely stepped into a high-end menswear boutique when a saleswoman in a tight skirt and heavy makeup blocked my path. She gave me a once-over, her eyes lingering on my faded, cheap t-shirt, and her expression immediately filled with contempt. Hey, you don't belong here. Get out, get out. She shooed at me with her hand like I was a fly. I frowned. I'm here to buy clothes. Buy clothes. The saleswoman scoffed. Do you have any idea how much one shirt costs here? Your entire monthly salary wouldn't even cover a sleeve. Stop wasting our time and get lost. Her shrill voice attracted the attention of the other customers. All eyes were on me, their gazes filled with amusement and mockery. Just then, a familiar voice cut through the noise. Well, if it isn't Ethan, what happened? The Van Cess finally kick you to the curb? Now you're so desperate you're digging through trash bins at the mall. I turned to see a slick-haired young man with a bombshell on his arm, smirking at me. It was my dear cousin, a direct descendant of the Thompson family, Chad Thompson. In my last life, he was the one who personally broke my legs. I looked at his smug face, and a crazy idea started to form. I wasn't going to let this go. Chad, a cold smirk played on my lips. Seeing an old enemy really gets the blood pumping. Chad, with the influencer type clinging to his arm, sauntered over to me, looking down his nose as if I were a charity case. Come on, Ethan, at least call me cuz. Look at you, so pathetic. Tell you what, get on your knees and bark like a dog 3 times, and I'll buy you a shirt. How about it? The girl next to him giggled, her laugh like nails on a chalkboard. Chad, you're so mean. I bet he doesn't even know how. Ha, he can learn. Chad laughed even harder. The snobbish saleswoman's face instantly transformed into a fawning smile. She scurried over to Chad's side. Mr. Thompson, you're here. Don't let this bum ruin your day. He's not worth your time. I'll have security throw him out right now. Don't, Chad said, holding up a hand, his eyes fixed on me with great interest. The fun's just getting started. It would be a shame to kick him out so soon. He loved seeing me grovel, seeing me broken. Too bad for him. He was about to be very disappointed. I ignored him and walked straight up to the saleswoman. Didn't you hear what I said? My voice dropped an octave. I want to buy clothes. She rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. And didn't you hear me? If you can't afford it, get out. Is that so? I pulled out my phone and dialed Mr. Quinn. Mr. Quinn, I need you to do something for me. Anything, young master. By the Grand Lux Plaza, I said. My tone as casual as if I were ordering a pizza. Mr. Quinn didn't hesitate for a second on the other end. Consider it done, young master. It will be taken care of within 5 minutes. I hung up and looked at the stunned faces in front of me. Chad and the saleswoman stared at me, dumbfounded. Then, they both erupted in hysterical laughter. Ha ha, by the Grand Lux Plaza? Ethan, are you still dreaming? Chad was laughing so hard tears were streaming down his face. Do you have any idea what this place is worth? Billions. What are you going to buy it with? Hot air. The saleswoman clutched her stomach, wheezing with laughter. Sir, you really missed your calling as a comedian. Our manager is upstairs. I could introduce you. Maybe you could perform for him. The other shoppers also shot me looks of ridicule, their whispers pricking at me like needles. Is this guy crazy? Look at the way he's dressed. He must have snapped. Kids these days, they have no idea how the world works. I said nothing. I just calmly looked at my watch. 5 minutes. It wouldn't even take that long. Less than 3 minutes later, a portly, middle-aged man in a suit came rushing down the escalator, sweat pouring down his face. He was the store manager. The saleswoman saw him and immediately ran up, pointing at me. "Mr. Davison, it's this lunatic. He's causing a scene, claiming he's going to buy the whole mall." I was just about to call security. She didn't get to finish her sentence. The moment Mr. Davison saw my face, his own turned sheet white. Then, as everyone watched in stunned silence, he practically sprinted over to me and dropped to his knees with a loud thud. Mr. Blackwood, I'm so sorry. I had no idea it was you gracing us with your presence." He started bowing his head, knocking it against the marble floor with loud, desperate thumps. It was as if someone had hit the mute button on the entire world. The laughter died in everyone's throats. The smirk on Chad's face was frozen solid. The saleswoman's expression was a sight to behold, shifting from contempt to shock, then to terror, and finally to the ashen gray of despair. She finally understood. She had just insulted someone she couldn't afford to even look at. I looked down at the kneeling Mr. Davison and spoke calmly. "So, can I buy some clothes now?" Mr. Davison flinched, burying his face even closer to the floor, his voice choked with tears. "Mr. Blackwood, please, you're joking. This store, no, this entire mall is now your property. You can take whatever you want. You don't need to buy anything." "Is that so?" I glanced at the petrified saleswoman. "Because your employee here seems to think otherwise." Mr. Davison instantly knew what I meant. He whipped his head around and slapped the saleswoman across the face with all his might. Crack! The sound was sharp and clear. "You stupid bitch. Are you blind? How dare you disrespect Mr. Blackwood?" Mr. Davison was shaking with rage, pointing a trembling finger at her. "You're fired. Get out of my sight right now. And don't even think about finding work in this city ever again." The saleswoman cradled her swollen cheek and collapsed to the floor, her eyes vacant with despair, mumbling, "No, please, sir, I'm sorry." I didn't spare her another glance. For a snob like her, this was exactly what she deserved. My gaze fell on Chad, whose face was now deathly pale. The arrogant swagger from moments before had completely vanished. He just stood there, his hands and feet trembling. "Mr. Blackwood." He looked from me to the kneeling manager, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Ethan, what? Who the hell are you?" "Who I am is none of your business," I said, stepping up to him and patting his cheek. The gesture was utterly humiliating. Chad's face turned beet red, but he didn't dare say a word. "You were saying something earlier," I asked softly, "about me getting on my knees and barking like a dog." Chad's whole body shuddered. A cold sweat soaked through the back of his shirt. "No, that wasn't. Mr. Blackwood, I was just joking. Yeah, just a joke." He forced a smile that was uglier than a grimace. "Really?" I smiled back. "Because I took you seriously." My eyes turned cold. "Kneel." Chad's legs gave out, and he collapsed to the floor with a pathetic thud. The crowd of onlookers didn't dare breathe, watching the scene unfold in horror. The high and mighty young master of the Thompson family was now kneeling on the ground like a common stray. The reversal was staggering. "Bark," I said. Chad's face contorted, a war raging between his pride and his fear. I lifted my foot and rested it on his shoulder, applying a little pressure. I don't like to repeat myself. Woof! A single, shameful bark escaped his lips. Woof! Woof woof! He squeezed his eyes shut as tears of humiliation streamed down his cheeks. Watching him, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. Just a cold, empty void. This was exactly what he did to me in my last life. I removed my foot and looked down at him. "Remember this. From now on, stay out of my sight. Because next time, it won't be as simple as barking." With that, I turned to Mr. Davison. "Have everything in the store that's my size packaged and delivered to this address." I quickly wrote down the address of my apartment, next door to Chloe's. "Yes, Mr. Blackwood, it will be done." Mr. Davison replied, as if he'd just been saved from the gallows. I walked away, feeling Chad's hateful glare on my back. I knew this wasn't over. The Thompsons wouldn't just let this go. But what did it matter? I was no longer the helpless outcast they could bully and discard. When I got back to my apartment building, I found Chloe waiting anxiously by my door. As soon as she saw me, she ran over, her face etched with worry. "Ethan, are you okay? That woman from before, did she come back to bother you?" She had clearly seen Sharon and her thugs burst into my apartment. A warmth spread through my chest. I shook my head. "It's fine. It's all been taken care of." "Really?" Chloe still looked worried, grabbing my arm to inspect me from head to toe. "They didn't hurt you, did they?" "No," I said, smiling and ruffling her hair. "Don't worry. No one is ever going to bully me again." My gaze was firm and confident. Chloe looked at me, a little stunned, before a blush crept back onto her cheeks. She nodded. "Okay, I believe you, Ethan." Just then, several large delivery trucks with the Grand Lux logo pulled up in front of the building. Mr. Davison himself led a team of employees, all carrying bags and boxes, as they hurried up the stairs. "Mr. Blackwood, we've delivered all the clothes you requested." "Mr. Davison said respectfully. Chloe stared at the incredible scene, her mouth agape in a perfect... "Ethan, what is all this?" I smiled, took a beautifully wrapped box from Mr. Davison, and handed it to her. "This is for you." Chloe instinctively opened it. Inside was a beautiful dress, the very one she had stared at for a long time in a store window a few weeks ago, but couldn't afford. This is too expensive. I can't take it," she said, shaking her head and trying to hand it back. "I say you can, so you can," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "Think of it as a thank you for the beef stew." Faced with my determined gaze, Chloe bit her lip and finally accepted the gift. "Thank you, Ethan," she mumbled, looking down at the floor. After sending Mr. Davison and his crew away, I looked at the mountain of clothes taking up half my living room and sighed. It was definitely time to find a new place to live. That afternoon, I got a call from the Thompson family patriarch, my so-called grandfather, Theodore Thompson. The moment I answered, his booming, furious voice roared through the phone. "Ethan, you ungrateful brat. Have you completely lost your mind? How dare you humiliate your own cousin? Do you have any respect for me? For this family?" I held the phone away from my ear and replied calmly. "If you have something to say, say it. If not, I'm hanging up." "You..." Theodore was so enraged he nearly choked. "I'm ordering you to come back here immediately and get on your knees and apologize to your cousin. If you don't, I will officially disown you and take back everything the family has ever given you." I laughed. "Disown me? I couldn't be happier. As for taking back everything..." I paused, a hint of mockery in my voice. "You seem to be mistaken about something. Everything I have now has absolutely nothing to do with the Thompson family." "What do you mean by that?" Theodore's voice was now laced with suspicion. "I mean, from this day forward, I, Ethan Reed, have nothing to do with the Thompsons. Whether you all live or die is no concern of mine." "You brat. You wouldn't dare." "Watch me." I sneered and hung up the phone. I could picture Theodore on the other end, red-faced and furious. "Good. That was the point. Cut ties. In my last life, you threw me out. In this life, I'm the one leaving you behind." That evening, I was going through the Blackwood family portfolio that Mr. Quinn had sent over when the doorbell rang again. I thought it was Chloe. When I opened the door, however, I was met with an unexpected face. Isabella Vance. She stood there in a sharp professional power suit, her face still wearing that same cold, distant expression. But in her beautiful eyes, there was a complex emotion I'd never seen before. A red Porsche was parked at the curb behind her. She had clearly come straight from the office. "Did your mother run home and tattle to you?" I asked, leaning casually against the doorframe. Isabella didn't answer my question. She just looked at me, her lips parting slightly. "Ethan, come back with me." Her tone wasn't a request. It was a command. I felt a laugh bubble up inside me. "Come back with you? Isabella, are you still asleep?" I smirked. "We broke up. Did you forget?" Isabella's brow furrowed. She seemed completely unused to me speaking to her with this kind of tone. "Stop this," she said, an edge of impatience in her voice. "I know you're still angry about what happened this morning. My mother was wrong. I apologize on her behalf." "An apology?" I laughed out loud. "In my last life, when your mother pointed at my face and called me a dog, when your family swept me out like trash, where were you?" Now you think a few empty words can erase everything. I don't need your apology, I said, my gaze turning cold. You're a busy CEO, Ms. Vance. You should probably go. My humble apartment can't possibly accommodate someone of your stature. Isabella's expression finally cracked. She had probably never imagined that the meek, obedient Ethan who had always catered to her every whim would ever speak to her with such sarcasm. Ethan, her voice rose. What do you want? Do you have to make things so ugly? Ugly, I sneered. When you stood in front of the media and told them I was just a distant relative, you didn't think that was ugly. When you threw me out like a piece of garbage, you didn't think that was ugly. These were the questions I never got to ask before I died. Isabella flinched, a flicker of panic in her eyes. I did that for the company. For the company? I cut her off. So, for your company, I deserve to be sacrificed? I deserve to be humiliated? Is that it? My voice wasn't loud, but every word was a dagger. Isabella's lips moved, but she couldn't form a response. For the first time, her perfect face showed an emotion I'd never seen on her before. Guilt. Ethan, I know I wronged you, she said, taking a deep breath as if making a monumental decision. If you come back with me, we can put all of this behind us. I can give you a position at the company. A vice president. She said it as if she were bestowing upon me the greatest gift in the world. Vice president, I started to laugh, so hard I almost cried. How pathetic. How utterly hilarious. She had no idea. She had no idea that to me, now, her little company, 10 of her companies, 100 of them, meant absolutely nothing. Isabella, I stopped laughing and looked her straight in the eye. Get over your pathetic pride. I don't need anything you have to offer. What you consider a gift, in my eyes, is worthless. From the moment you decided to end our engagement, we were finished. Now, please leave my home. My words were a blade that sliced through her final layer of composure. Her face went deathly pale, and she swayed on her feet. What? What did you say? She whispered, unable to believe her ears. Just then, a timid voice came from inside the apartment. Ethan? Who is it? Chloe walked out from the kitchen, holding a plate of sliced fruit. She was wearing the new dress I'd given her, which made her look even more lovely and sweet. When she saw Isabella at the door, she froze, then nervously ducked behind me. Isabella's gaze fell on Chloe like a physical blow. The two women, one as cold as winter frost, the other as gentle as a spring breeze, stood in stark contrast in the narrow hallway. The air crackled with an invisible tension. Isabella's eyes darted between Chloe and me, and her expression turned absolutely glacial. I see, she said with a sudden, cold laugh, her voice dripping with scorn. No wonder you had such a change of heart. You already had your next one lined up. She looked at Chloe with an expression of dismissive, condescending judgment. Ethan, your taste is still as poor as ever. That did it. Isabella. I took a step forward, shielding Chloe behind me, my eyes as cold and sharp as daggers. Watch your mouth. My life is none of your business. You have 3 seconds to get out of my sight. Now, Chloe, tucked safely behind me, nervously clutched the back of my shirt, her body trembling slightly. Isabella watched me protect Chloe, and the ice in her eyes practically solidified. Her chest heaved with suppressed fury. Fine. Just fine, she ground out through clenched teeth. Ethan, don't you dare regret this. With that, she spun on her heel, the sharp clicks of her stilettos echoing down the hall as she stalked away, trailing a cloud of icy rage behind her. I watched her disappear down the stairs without a shred of sentiment. Regret? The best decision I ever made in this life was ending my engagement to her. I turned and saw Chloe still looking like a frightened deer, her face pale. I softened my voice. Chloe, don't be scared. It's over. Chloe looked up, her big eyes glistening with unshed tears, a hint of hurt in her voice. Ethan, did I cause trouble for you? You silly girl. I couldn't help but smile, ruffling her hair. You didn't cause any trouble. She was the one being unreasonable. Hearing that, Chloe visibly relaxed, but then another worry crossed her face. But she seems really powerful. What if she? Don't worry, I said, looking her in the eyes, my voice full of conviction. In this world, no one will ever be able to bully us again. My promise made Chloe's cheeks flush red once more. The next few days were surprisingly calm. Neither the Van Cess nor the Thompsons came looking for me. It was as if they'd forgotten I existed. But I knew it was just the quiet before the storm. They weren't the types to give up so easily. I used the time, with Mr. Quinn's help, to start familiarizing myself with the vast Blackwood family portfolio that Mr. Quinn had sent over when the doorbell rang again. The $1 trillion in liquid assets was just the tip of the iceberg. The family's real power was a terrifying global conglomerate that had its hands in every industry imaginable: finance, tech, energy, real estate. You name it. The finish line I could never reach in my last life was now my starting point. One day, while reviewing a file on an overseas investment, I got a call from an unknown number. "Mr. Reed?" a respectful male voice asked. "This is the property manager from Summit Estates. The custom villa you commissioned is fully furnished and ready for you to move in at your convenience." Summit Estates? It took me a moment to recall Mr. Quinn mentioning it a few days ago. My mother had apparently prepared a residence for me here in Riverbend City. Summit Estates was the most exclusive, high-end gated community in the entire city. Every resident was a titan of industry or from old money. A single villa started in the 9-figure range. And according to Mr. Quinn, my mother had bought the largest and best-located property in the entire development, Villa 1, the King of the Hill, as a welcome home gift for me. It was definitely time to move. I hired a moving company to pack up my few belongings and, with Chloe by my side, headed for Summit Estates. As our car passed through the grand gates, Chloe stared at the meticulously manicured gardens and palace-like mansions, once again rendered speechless. "Ethan, are we really going to live here?" she stammered. "We are," I said with a smile. The car finally stopped in front of a massive, impossibly luxurious villa. And waiting there, at the entrance, was someone I never expected to see: Chad Thompson. Behind him stood a row of Thompson family elders, led by none other than my dear grandfather, Theodore Thompson. And behind them, a crowd of gawking neighbors had gathered. Among them, I could clearly see Isabella Vance and her mother, Sharon. It looked like they were here to call me to account, and they'd chosen my new front door to do it. Theodore Thompson, leaning on a dragon-headed cane, stood at the entrance like a king. When he saw me get out of the car, he snorted. "You brat, so you finally decided to show your face." The other Thompson elders glared at me with undisguised fury. "Ethan, you've gone too far. How dare you lay a hand on Chad? You've disgraced the Thompson family name." Sharon, naturally, was the loudest of them all. "Well, look who it is. Kicked out by my family, disowned by the Thompsons, and now you're renting a car to pose in front of a place like this? Do you really think Summit Estates would ever let trash like you through the gates?" Isabella stood off to the side, silent, but her cold gaze made it clear she agreed. She thought I was putting on a pathetic show. I ignored the clowns and walked directly up to Theodore Thompson. "I'll say it one more time. I have nothing to do with the Thompson family anymore." Insolence. Theodore was so enraged by my attitude that he raised his cane to strike me. "You have Thompson blood in your veins. You will always be a Thompson. Today, as your grandfather, I'm going to teach you the lesson your dead father never could." His cane swung high in the air, but in the next second, a powerful hand shot out and clamped down on his wrist, stopping it cold. It was Mr. Quinn. He had appeared at my side at some point, his face dark and menacing. "Mr. Thompson, you would be wise to show respect, especially when you don't know who you're dealing with. Mr. Quinn's voice was like chips of ice. "Did you really think you could lay a hand on a young master of the Blackwood family?" "The Blackwood family? Young master?" Theodore froze. Everyone froze. "Blackwood? Which Blackwood family?" Theodore asked, his voice shaking. "The Blackwoods," Mr. Quinn said slowly, letting the weight of the words sink in. "Of New York." Those 4 words hit the crowd like a bolt of lightning. The New York Blackwoods, the most powerful, most mysterious, most elite family in the entire country. The global behemoth whose slightest move could send ripples through the world economy. The color drained from Theodore Thompson's face. His dragon-headed cane clattered to the pavement. "No. Impossible. How could he be a Blackwood?" he mumbled, looking as if he'd aged 10 years in 10 seconds. Sharon's jaw hung open, her face completely bloodless. Isabella's body swayed, and she nearly collapsed. She stared at me, her eyes filled with a storm of shock, regret, and utter disbelief. She finally understood why I'd said her company was worthless to me. She finally understood why I'd called her pathetic and laughable. All this time, the empire she was so proud of, the status she held so dear, was nothing but a joke in the face of my true identity. She hadn't thrown away a stepping stone. She had thrown away a dragon poised to soar into the heavens. So, are you still going to teach me a lesson? My dear grandfather. I walked up to Theodore, bent down, picked up his cane, and handed it back to him with a playful smile. Theodore looked at me, his lips trembling, his eyes filled with terror. No, I wouldn't dare. Mr. Blackwood, it was my mistake. I was blind. He had already changed how he addressed me. Good. I nodded, then turned my gaze to Chad. Chad was already paralyzed with fear. His legs buckled, and he dropped to his knees, frantically bowing his head to the ground. No, Mr. Blackwood, I was wrong. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'll never do it again. I looked at him and smiled. You're sorry now? It's too late. I paid no more attention to the groveling Chad or the shell-shocked Thompsons. Mr. Quinn, please take out the trash. Yes, young master. Mr. Quinn waved a hand, and a team of men in black suits appeared from nowhere. They grabbed the Thompsons and began dragging them away like sacks of garbage. No, Ethan, you can't do this to me. I'm your grandfather. Theodore screamed, struggling wildly, his old face a mask of horror and disbelief. Mr. Blackwood, have mercy, Chad wailed, tears and snot streaming down his face. I ignored them and turned to enter my new home. As I passed Isabella, my gaze paused on her for a fraction of a second. She stood frozen, her face as white as a sheet, staring at me with a look of utter desolation. Her eyes, once so cold and proud, were now brimming with tears of regret and despair. Ethan, she whispered, her lips trembling, as if she wanted to say something, but I couldn't even be bothered to look at her. A missed opportunity is missed forever. For a snob like her, the crushing despair of realizing the trash she threw away had become a god she could only gaze up at. That was the ultimate, most fitting punishment. There is no deeper regret than when the truth comes out and it's already too late. I took Chloe's hand and led her into our new home. Behind me, I could hear Sharon's hysterical screams. Isabella, do something. We've offended the Blackwoods. Our family is finished. We're finished. Isabella didn't answer. I could feel her gaze fixed on my back, burning into me, until the massive front door slowly swung shut, closing off the chaos of the outside world. Inside the villa, Chloe was still reeling from the shock. Ethan, you're from a New York Blackwood family. I nodded, leading her to a plush sofa. I'm sorry, Chloe. I should have told you sooner. Chloe shook her head. Her expression held none of the distance or awkwardness that might come with such a revelation. Only pure, simple worry. I'm not mad. It feels like a dream. Does this mean you'll be going back to New York soon? There was a subtle note of sadness in her voice. I looked into her clear eyes, and my heart stirred. Chloe, would you be willing to come to New York with me? Chloe's head snapped up, her eyes shining with a surprised, hopeful light. Can I? Of course you can, I said, taking her hand in mine. I told you, no one is ever going to hurt you again. From now on, wherever I am, that's your home. Chloe's eyes welled up. She nodded vigorously. Okay. Just then my phone rang. It was a video call from an unknown number. I answered it. The screen lit up with the face of a beautiful, elegant woman, her features noble but marked by years of hidden sorrow. Her eyes, her brow. She looked so much like me. Ethan. She looked at me, her voice catching as tears immediately streamed down her face. It's Mom. Mom is so sorry. It was my mother, Eleanor Blackwood. Looking at the face on the screen, so familiar and yet so strange, 2 decades of repressed loneliness and pain erupted inside me all at once. My own eyes grew hot. Mom, I thought that was it. I thought this was the happy ending. I would inherit the Blackwood fortune, marry Chloe, and live happily ever after. But I had no idea that a much larger conspiracy was already closing in, and that Isabella Vance was standing right in the middle of it. I talked with my mother for a long time. We talked about everything, silly things I did as a kid, her years of struggle and planning in New York. It turned out she hadn't left me by choice. A rival branch of the Blackwood family had forced her out. They coveted the family leadership and saw my mother and me as threats. To protect me, she had to fake her death and return to New York, where she slowly and carefully reclaimed her power. Now, with all obstacles cleared and her control over the family solidified, she finally felt it was safe to contact me. "Ethan, everything is ready for you here in New York. When will you come home?" Eleanor's voice was filled with longing. I thought for a moment, "Mom, there's still a few loose ends to tie up here in Riverbend. Once I'm done, I'll bring Chloe to see you." "Chloe?" Eleanor paused, then a knowing smile spread across her face. "Is that the sweet girl from next door? Oh, that's wonderful. I'll be waiting for you both." After we hung up, my mind was still racing. The next day, someone unexpected showed up at my villa. The chairman of the Vance Corporation, Isabella's father, Stephen Vance. Unlike his abrasive wife, Stephen was a rather cultured, soft-spoken man. In my previous life, he'd always been polite to me, but there was always an undercurrent of dismissiveness, a clear sense that he saw me as beneath him. "Mr. Blackwood," he said, standing at my door with his shoulders slumped, a bitter smile on his face. I let him in. He remained standing. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm here to apologize on behalf of my wife and daughter." "There's no need for apologies," I said coolly. "There's nothing left to say between me and your family." Stephen sighed heavily. "I know. They were blind, and they made a terrible, irreversible mistake. I'm not here today to ask for your forgiveness. I'm only here to beg you to spare the Vance family, to give us a chance to survive." My eyebrows went up. Had only been one day. The crisis had already hit them that hard. The power of the Blackwood name was truly terrifying. "As of this morning, every single one of our corporate partners has unilaterally terminated their contracts," Stephen said, his voice heavy with exhaustion and despair. "The banks have all called in our loans, demanding immediate repayment in full. Mr. Blackwood, with just one word from you, the Vance family can be saved. I am willing to transfer 50% of the Vance Corporation's shares to you, free of charge." 50%. That was a fortune worth billions. Stephen was cutting off a limb to save the body. I looked at him and suddenly asked, "Where's Isabella? Why didn't she come?" At the mention of his daughter, a complicated look crossed Stephen's face. She's locked herself in her room. She hasn't come out all day." I sneered internally. Locked herself away? What kind of melodrama was she trying to play now? "I don't need your shares," I said, picking up a teacup and blowing gently on the surface. "If you want to spare the Vance family, fine. But I have one condition." Stephen's eyes lit up. "Please, Mr. Blackwood, say the word. We'll agree to anything." I set the cup down and looked him dead in the eye. "I want Isabella Vance to come here and beg me herself, and I want her to do it in front of the entire Riverbend City Press Corps. I want her to admit to everyone how she threw me away, how blind and foolish she was." Stephen's face went pale. That would be a fate worse than death for someone like Isabella. Her pride was everything. How could she possibly? I watched his expression shift and smiled coldly. "Can't do it? Then prepare for bankruptcy." With that, I showed him the door. Stephen Vance left, looking like a ghost. I knew he would repeat my words to Isabella, verbatim. The choice was now hers. I was curious to see just how much her precious pride was worth when her family's entire existence was on the line. However, I didn't get an apology from Isabella. Instead, I got some shocking news. The Thompson family was bankrupt, and the person who single-handedly destroyed them was Isabella Vance. Mr. Quinn placed a file in front of me, his expression grim. "Young master, last night, Isabella Vance leveraged all of her resources and connections to launch a devastating financial assault on the Thompson family. She exposed their tax evasion schemes and several fatal flaws in their overseas projects. Working with the city's commerce and tax bureaus, she completely dismantled their empire overnight." I looked at the file surprised. Isabella went after the Thompsons. For me? What happened to Theodore and Chad? I asked. Theodore Thompson had a stroke from the shock and is hospitalized. He's paralyzed from the waist down. Chad was arrested for multiple counts of financial fraud. He'll likely spend the rest of his life in prison. Mr. Quinn reported. It was a clean, ruthless, and devastatingly effective attack. Very much in character for the Ice Queen CEO. Why would she do this? I wondered aloud. Mr. Quinn was silent for a moment. Perhaps it was an attempt to get back in your good graces? A roundabout way of apologizing. Good graces? An apology? I scoffed. If she really wanted to apologize, why not do what I asked? Kneel at my door for 3 days, or admit her foolishness to the press? Wouldn't either of those be more sincere than taking down the Thompsons? In the end, she still couldn't let go of her arrogant pride. She thought by getting revenge for me in this way, I would take her back. How naive. Young master, Isabella Vance is outside the gate right now. She's asking to see you, Mr. Quinn added. I walked to the window and pulled back a corner of the curtain. There she was, standing outside the main gate, dressed in a simple white dress. Without her severe business attire, she looked fragile, almost haunted. She just stood there, letting the early autumn wind whip through her long hair, her gaze fixed unwaveringly on the villa, like a statue waiting for a long-lost love. The irony was suffocating. I let the curtain fall. Tell her I don't want to see her, I told Mr. Quinn. Yes, young master. After Mr. Quinn left, Chloe came in with a glass of warm milk, looking at me with concern. Ethan, are you really not going to see her? I took the milk and took a sip, the warmth spreading through me. What difference would it make? Whatever was between us ended a long time ago. Chloe gave a small, understanding nod and didn't press the issue. I thought that would be the end of it, but I had severely underestimated Isabella's stubbornness. She actually stood outside my villa gate for an entire day and night, without food, without water, without a single word. The next day, the sky opened up. A cold, hard rain began to fall. I found myself at the window again. She was still there, a lone figure against the storm. Her thin frame was shaking in the wind, soaked to the bone, her face as pale as parchment. Rain streamed down her face, and I couldn't tell if it was water or tears. Her eyes, once so cold, were now filled with a desperate, pleading sorrow, locked on the second-floor window of my room. That look, it was like a drill boring into my heart. I'll admit it, my resolve wavered. Even after everything she did to me in my past life, seeing her like this, I couldn't be completely heartless. With a sigh, I grabbed an umbrella and went to the door. The very instant I opened it, Isabella's body finally gave out. She swayed, then fell straight backward. Isabella! My eyes widened, and without a second thought, I sprinted out into the storm. I reached her just before she hit the pavement, catching her in my arms. Her body was burning up, her lips were tinged with blue, and she was completely unconscious. Damn it! I scooped her up and ran back inside. Mr. Quinn, call a doctor. Now! The villa erupted in controlled chaos. I carried her to a guest room, quickly stripped off her wet clothes, and wrapped her in the thickest blankets I could find. Chloe rushed in with a hot drink, her face pale with worry when she saw Isabella's deathly pale face. The family doctor arrived within minutes. After a quick examination, his expression was grave. Mr. Blackwood, the young lady has acute pneumonia. Her fever is over 104. Combined with the exposure and extreme exhaustion, her condition is critical. We need to get her to a hospital immediately. I didn't hesitate. Get the car. We're going to the best hospital in the city. The ambulance screamed through the streets of Riverbend City. I sat inside, watching the unconscious Isabella, a whirlwind of emotions churning inside me. Did I hate her? Yes. I hated her for her cruelty, for her coldness. But had I loved her? Yes. That too. 5 years of devotion wasn't a lie. The late nights I spent caring for her, the scars I earned for her, those things were carved into my very soul. Maybe that was why the hate ran so deep, because the love had once been just as profound. At the hospital, Isabella was rushed directly into the ICU. I stood outside the glass, watching her through the window, an oxygen mask on her face, tubes, and wires connecting her to a dozen machines. Stephen and Sharon Vance arrived soon after, looking frantic. Sharon looked like she was about to launch into a tirade, but Stephen grabbed her arm and held her back. Mr. Blackwood. Stephen looked at me, his eyes full of a complex mixture of gratitude and fear. Thank you Thank you for saving Isabella. She's not out of the woods yet, I said, my voice hoarse. I know, he sighed. The doctor told me everything. This is all our fault. We were fools. If anything happens to Isabella, our family, we're truly finished. His words carried a subtle, unspoken threat. If Isabella died, the Vance family wouldn't just face financial ruin. They would likely face the full, unrestrained wrath of the Blackwood family. I understood what he was implying, but I didn't have the energy to care. All I knew was that I didn't want her to die. Not like this. 3 days later, Isabella was finally stable enough to be moved from the ICU to a regular room. When she woke up, I was sitting by her bed, peeling an apple. Ethan, she whispered, her voice raspy. I held out a slice of apple. Want some? She didn't take it. She just stared at me as silent tears began to roll down her cheeks. Why? Why did you save me? She choked out. I thought. You hated me. My hand paused. Why had I saved her? Maybe in the end, it was to give that pathetic, devoted version of myself from my last life some kind of closure. When you're better, you should leave Riverbend City, I said, standing up. I didn't want to see her cry. Go somewhere no one knows you. Start over. No. She suddenly became agitated, grabbing my hand with surprising strength. I'm not leaving. Ethan, don't make me leave. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Her hand was cold, but her grip was like a vice, as if I were her last lifeline. I love you, Ethan, she cried out. I've always loved you. I was too proud. I was afraid to admit it. I was afraid people would say I was only successful because of a man. I was afraid. I looked at her tear-streaked face and felt nothing but a deep, weary numbness. Love? What good was that word now? Just then, the hospital room door opened. Chloe walked in, carrying a thermos of chicken soup. When she saw Isabella clutching my hand, sobbing out a confession of love, the gentle smile on her face froze. The air in the room turned to ice. Chloe stood paralyzed in the doorway, her face ashen. Isabella saw her too, and her grip on my hand tightened, her eyes flashing with a possessive, hostile glare like a cornered animal. What are you doing here? Isabella's voice was weak, but sharp with aggression. Chloe flinched, looking at me with hurt and confusion in her eyes. I sighed internally and gently pulled my hand from Isabella's grasp. I walked over to Chloe and took the thermos from her. Chloe, thank you for this, I said softly. Why don't you go home and get some rest? I've got things covered here. My actions, my tone, it was all the answer anyone needed. Chloe glanced from me to the woman in the bed, whose expression had soured even further. She gave a small, understanding nod. Okay, Ethan, don't wear yourself out. She turned and quietly left the room. Watching her go, I felt a sharp pang in my chest. Ethan, Isabella's voice behind me was shrill. What was that? You're flirting with another woman right in front of me. What do you take me for? I turned back to her, seeing her face flushed with anger, and found the situation absurd. Isabella, have you forgotten? We're no longer engaged. Who I see is my business, not yours. I don't approve, she shrieked. I don't approve of the breakup. Ethan Reed, you are my man, and you will be for the rest of your life. Such a possessive declaration might have made me ecstatic in my past life. Now it was just pathetic. What am I to you, really? I asked her, my voice low and serious. A pet you can call over and dismiss whenever you please? A tool you can throw away and pick back up when it's convenient? My question rendered her speechless. You don't love me, Isabella. You love the idea of me. You love the shadow that followed you around, that catered to your every whim. I shook my head, a trace of pity in my eyes. The only person you've ever truly loved is yourself. No, that's not true. She shook her head wildly, fresh tears streaming down her face. Ethan, please just give me one more chance. I'll change. I'll change anything. I don't care about the company anymore. I don't care about anything. I only want you. She threw back the covers and tried to get out of bed, but her body was too weak. She stumbled and fell to the floor in a heap. My first instinct was to rush forward, but I stopped myself. I couldn't be weak. Not again. Every moment of pity I showed her was a betrayal to Chloe, and a betrayal to the man I used to be, the one who died with nothing but regret. I looked down at the pathetic, broken woman on the floor, took a deep breath, and said the cruelest thing I could. Isabella, stop this pathetic act. It won't work. Because I don't love you anymore. I stopped loving you the moment I was reborn. The words hit her like a physical blow. She froze completely, staring up at me in utter disbelief, her pupils dilating in shock. Reborn. And just like that, she understood. She understood the sudden change in my personality. She understood how I seemed to know what was going to happen. The truth was out, and with it came a despair more final than death. She realized that she hadn't just missed an opportunity. She had missed a lifetime. No, 2 lifetimes. No. Isabella crumpled to the floor, shaking her head as if trying to physically deny it, mumbling over and over. That's impossible. You're lying. You have to be lying. She couldn't accept it. If I was reborn, it meant I had lived through it all. It meant she had been the one to push me into that abyss, and I had returned bearing the scars of that ultimate betrayal. And if that were true, there was no going back. No apology, no grand gesture could ever bridge a gap that wide. I watched her break down, but my heart was calm. Get some rest. I left her with those words and walked out of the room, and this time I didn't look back. Chloe hadn't gone far. She was leaning against the wall down the hall, waiting for me. She didn't ask any questions. She just walked up to me and silently took my hand. Her hand was so warm. I squeezed it tight, wrapping her small hand completely in mine, as if to hold onto this simple, precious warmth forever. Chloe, I said, let's go home. Okay. A week later, Isabella was discharged from the hospital. She didn't try to contact me again. The Vance family sold all of their assets in Riverbend City and left, destination unknown. A saga that had spanned 2 lifetimes was finally, truly over. The Thompson family was now just a footnote in the city's history. Theodore died not long after his stroke, and Chad was sentenced to life in prison. There was nothing left for me in Riverbend City. I took Chloe with me on a private jet bound for New York. As we ascended, the city below grew smaller and smaller. Ethan, look, a rainbow, Chloe whispered, leaning her head on my shoulder and pointing out the window. I looked out and saw a brilliant arc of color stretching across the sky. After the storm, there's always a rainbow. Maybe life was like that, too. I smiled and leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to the top of her head. Chloe, when we get to New York, let's get married. Chloe's face instantly turned bright red. She buried her face in my chest, her voice a barely audible squeak. Whatever you want, Ethan. I held her tight, feeling her warmth against me, a sense of peace settling over me for the first time in 2 lives. In my last life, I simped my way to rock bottom. In this one, I just wanted to coast, and ended up with the entire world. A dragon does not belong in shallow waters. My new life was just beginning. New York, here I come. End.